Welcome to On to the Next Project. I'm Brian Miller.
And I'm Adam Kurtinger.
And on this show, Adam and I have a weekly free form conversation about building a living and a life with your passion.
And this week's topic is unpredictability. So when you sent that to me, I was wondering, I wanted you to talk about it first. I wanted to see your perspective on that because it might be a little bit more interesting, I think, on the conversation. So, what does that mean to you, unpredictability?
I'm so curious now why you think I'd have a better perspective on unpredictability. I guess for me, it's really comes down to the fact that I've only ever been self-employed. And I've never had the stability of a 9 to 5 or a full-time job that was coming in no matter what. And so much of my career and therefore my life has been impacted by the unpredictability of client flow, when I'm going to have work, when I don't, if things cancel, get rescheduled, ups and downs in the economy, all those different things can really play into my living. And because I don't have that stability of a 9 to 5, my living ends up just becoming my life, right? If there's a lot of unpredictability in my business, I can't plan vacations, or it's harder to say, "Oh, let's go out to eat," or whatever, because there's nothing guaranteed um, going on. So that's where my head is around unpredictability.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because it is. That's the type of lifestyle of an artist or an entrepreneur or a self-employed person, like you're saying. That if you want to do those types of things, you have to make time for it, and then, like you said, you just block out that time, which is something that I've always had a hard time doing for two reasons. First of all, I don't really like going on vacation. So it's never been personally a priority for me, let alone actually having the time to do it. Because, like, again, for me personally, how I relax is by doing projects
Yeah,
personally.
so we're very similar in
Yeah.
that way. Like, I don't know how to take a real vacation, right? So for me, when people when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, this weekend was great. I didn't do anything." I'm like, "What do you mean you didn't do anything?" And then they're like, "No, I sat or I watched TV all weekend. I watched movies." And I'm like, "Man, I love movies. Like, I really do. But after about 10, 15 minutes of not doing anything, I need something to do. I need a project. That's why it's so dangerous that I have a home office, right? All my work comes out of the house, because if I'm just, quote, relaxing, within 10 minutes, I'm back up here working. I gotta be doing something. I'm no good at if I'm doing a vacation. That's why my wife and I love Disney so much. It's so active and all
Mm.
consuming. I can't focus on anything else. I can't sit on a beach. I lose my mind.
Yeah, no, that's hard. No, but I like what you're saying too about, like, not being able to be. I even think of it too much as just keeping yourself busy. It's just you're doing your interest. It's what you're interested in, right? Because, like,
Yeah.
for you, I imagine part of what you do to let go, and once we talked about it a little bit the other day, not in the podcast, I don't think, but about listening to music for you,
Mhm.
and how that's something that you use to, and but again, is that the same as like watching a movie or something? Again, to me, like, I my hobby is also my passion. Uh,
Mhm.
so I don't have a dull moment. There's not enough time in the day for me to do what I want to do. There's nothing unless I'm sick. I don't. There's no other time that I want to do nothing.
Yeah. Let's bring it back around to unpredictability, though, because I think, just like last time, it's easy for us to steer off onto all the
Sure.
extra topics, because I could just go down a rabbit hole about the difficulty of taking vacations and taking
Oh
time,
yeah.
because you do need to take time off. Like, I think that's a topic for a future episode, as you and I are both probably
Well,
more
it
we're probably
happens.
prone to burnout.
Yeah, burnout. That's what I was gonna say. That's exactly
Yeah.
what I was gonna call it. That's what it's called. It's called burnout. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah, again, that's
exactly it.
a topic for another day. But yeah, unpredictability. Yeah. Well, it kind of brings me to also thinking about, not to tie into too much about what you already talk about being lucky, you
Mhm.
know, is about, since it's unpredictable, the nature of something being unpredictable is not knowing what's coming. So it's just having a lot of trust in what you're doing, and then that people will engage with it and like it.
Is that it? Is it just faith? Because I gotta tell you, on my podcast, that has come up so many times when I've pressed really successful people on the idea of luck and success. So many of them say, "I just always had this faith." They're not talking about religious faith. They're just talking about some deep belief that it was just somehow going to work out, and it may go this way or that way, ups and downs, but somehow it's going to work out.
Yeah. I
Do you
believe that 'cause if you don't believe it, why in the world would you expect anyone else to believe it?
Where
It
does that faith come from though in people like us and people who are project people and artists? Where do you get that conviction that somehow, because it doesn't always work out. And
well,
yet
and not only that, but one thing can be dangerous is recognizing that that's really what it is, because some people are just distracted by the goal rather than having faith in the actual work itself, you know? Of so,
hmm,
like, of it using it as a whatever that thing is to get somewhere else versus actually believing in the project. Does that make sense?
yeah, I'm trying to get there. Try that again in a different way. So
I
faith
guess
in
I'll make up a anecdotal example of, maybe someone who's a performer wanting to be an actor, and they take this gig that they don't like in order to try to get exposure to be
mm,
to a show that they wanna get type of thing, you know?
mm.
In that process, not to say that that doesn't work or that you should never do that, but, like, is going through that process that you don't like, is that honestly gonna get you there? Or even are you even happy doing that? Because 'Cause you're trying to force some unpredictability to try to get to where you are, rather than just doing what you would naturally do, I think.
That's interesting. The idea
Manufacture it?
that you can manufacture unpredictability. Like I yeah,
Put yourself
that
in a
seems
lucky position, right? Yeah.
yeah, that seems counterintuitive. I'm curious for from your point of view, because you do, hands-on projects, whereas, as we've talked about, I mostly do kind of projects in the mind. With the hands-on stuff, even though you've built a puppet now hundreds, if not more
Yeah,
times, right? Have you built them thousands of times yet? I mean, it's right,
fine.
lots and
Eh,
lots of
1,000,
puppets.
but a lot. Yeah.
So is there still unpredictability when you sit down to a new puppet, or you pretty much know everything that could go wrong at this point or could go different? It's not wrong.
No, that's great. That's great because no, it's 2 things. Well, first of all, um, a lot of times part of why I choose or decide to do a project is because I wanna learn something new in
Mm,
what I'm doing, whether it's a different material or a different process. So there's a lot. If you just looked at the character, you'd be like, "Oh, it's probably the same process that he used for all of his puppets." And a
mm.
lot of that process is the same, but I like to have some little element of challenge to myself because honestly, that's why I do it, you know? That's the part that challenge figuring out something is why I like what I do, rather than, like, if I had to build the same puppet over and over all the time or the same style of thing completely, on the inside, from process standpoint, it'd be grueling and I wouldn't like it.
I have such an internal conflict with what you're saying right now. And before I go off on that, anybody who's watching, let us know in the comments if you prefer to know kind of everything that's coming, to really know all the variables in advance, if you're a research person,
Mm.
or if you are more like Adam, if you like
An
to, because
artiste.
you yeah, an artiste. Yes, exactly. You really like to just discover it as you go. Let us know in the comments which way you prefer. And I am torn between those 2 because as I was thinking, as you were saying that, I was like, I feel like I'm the opposite, that we're gonna have this kinda give and take right now, because you like to just kinda go in head first and discover things, and I'm much more of a planner insofar as I wanna know everything that could go wrong. But then by the same token, I don't wait until I'm sure I'm capable of doing something to dive in. I dive into projects all the time. I pre-sell all the time. A new speech that I've never given, I'll sell it on just passion alone. Say I've got this great topic about this thing and it's going to be fantastic and here's how it's going to go. And someone will book it, and once they book it, I'll go, "Huh, now I have to write it." Right?
Yeah.
And so on one hand, I love diving in and discovering the process, but then once I feel like once I'm in a project, once I've got the commitment, then I really like to do the research and get deep and find out, is there something that 6 weeks from now might surprise me that if I knew now, I could avoid being surprised by? Like, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No,
You're not like
absolutely.
that?
No, 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 I'm not like that at all. It kinda goes against my whole philosophy, and I think it blocks creativity, and I think it
Hmm,
blocks people from being productive, and there's definitely give and take. Because I think well, one of my things I think of all the time is that, what is it? Perfection is the antithesis of creativity, right? Which is something people are probably familiar with. That kind of idea is people spend so much time trying to make something perfect that they just never end up really producing anything, or at least not as much as they could. I'm a much more trial and error type person, you know. So with everything, with the other podcasts that I started, with even my YouTube channel, with puppets that I build, I kind of just jump in head first, and then because a lot of times I'm gonna discover things that I never even would have thought of on my own. Whereas I feel like if I over plan something, I'm really putting myself in a box. But then
mm.
again, there's a lot of value to that as well. And this conversation we're having is evidence of that. Is because my idea was, hey, let's just talk random, and you're like, we can have a topic. And because here's the thing, and I love taking suggestions like that too. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. That's probably a good idea. So I'm willing to try anything, really.
But is it so there, but I think right there is the compromise, right? And maybe compromise isn't the right. That's what we do when we get on the phone, by and large. But for this, because I know that there's an audience, and I know that when I'm an audience of a podcast or a video podcast or whatever, if they're just rambling because they're friends, I get bored really quick. And so my instinct was, let's at least make sure that within the free form, we're sticking to a topic so that people listening will have an idea of what we're trying to talk about. And so somewhere between the two of us is what's
Yeah.
happening right now.
Sure, yeah.
Um,
And I'm with you on that.
yeah.
But I guess my question is in my thinking, and there's no wrong answer to this. Are we doing it for them? Or are we doing it for us? Right?
Well, that's I think a question for a future episode because I think
Yeah,
we're
definitely.
both getting ready to wrap this one up
Yeah,
right
no,
now.
that's the one thing I guess I'd trying to connect this to predictability, which I'm probably going to do that very loosely, is just that, just knowing why you're doing something. Are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for somebody else? And doing it for somebody else is fine. I think people, for some reason, when I said the way it came out, it sounded not like the positive choice to make. But especially if it's for a loved one, or family, or work, or whatever it is, there's reasons to do both. I think it's just nice to have a conscious thought as to why sometimes.
Well, and I think that what I would say to that, and we might have to expand on this in a different episode, and if in a later date, but what I would say to that is that might be exactly the difference between the way you get to do your art and the way that I get to do my art, because you get to do it, you don't have to do it. That is one of the big fundamental differences between doing it as a, I don't know, a side. I hesitate to call what you do a side hustle because it's such a massive part of your life, but it is not your 9 to 5. It is not what you're relying on to make a living. Whereas I rely on this, which means I can't just do stuff because it makes me happy. I have to do stuff that's somehow in the intersection between what makes me happy and what the people want to buy from me, because I make a full-time living doing this. And if I only care about what I like and I'm not serving the people who are my audience, it's no good. It doesn't help me at all. Then I got
Yeah,
to go get some 9 to
yeah.
5. So I think that might be where we have some slightly different vantage points
Yeah, no, and I
on
think
that.
I think that it is different, but it's also, I think where it would be the same is essentially at a different level, because like obviously, this is for me, like I don't want to be over a barrel
Mhm.
to have to make my art to pay a bill.
Yeah.
I guess the caveat to that, where I wouldn't mind making a living off of doing my art, is if I made so much money that it didn't even matter anymore, where money wasn't even I made so much money at it that money wasn't even an option anymore.
Yeah.
That I'm really just doing it for like think of any like essentially what's his name, oh my gosh,
I have a
Robert
good
Downey
idea.
Jr.
Oh, sure,
Robert
sure.
Downey Jr. He could. do any. He doesn't need to take a gig now. He can just do
Right.
what he wants because he wants to.
Well,
He's
that
that point, that threshold.
yeah, my favorite example of that is Lady Gaga because
Yeah, yeah,
she was right, Juilliard trained, brilliant classically trained musician, was never gonna make a penny because that's not what the world wants is jazz musicians with Juilliard training, right? And then she just did a couple of calculations, said, "If I took what I've learned and I did this put this pop thing on the outside of it and got really ridiculous for a while, maybe I can make some money." And she did. She made a bajillion dollars, and at the second she made enough money to live for the rest of her life, she left and she started doing jazz and like big band and she started
yeah.
doing all this stuff that she loved and she put out this amazing album with Tony Bennett, which is one of my favorite albums, this album of classic jazz covers, cheek to cheek. It's incredible. She's doing her art the way she wants to now because she got so far past the money barrier that she can just do what she likes. Like Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter. When's the last time you heard him in a great movie? No, he's taking random ridiculous indie roles because he's set for life. He's just
Yeah, he's
exploring his
good.
art now.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Bless him.
Yeah, yeah. Though again, that's which is what I was saying before. So, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for them? And
Yeah.
those are kind of examples where those people did it for them first, so that they could do it for themselves.
Yeah, they did
So
it for the audience first so they could do it for themselves later.
so
Yeah.
it does work both ways, and it depends on what you're trying to do and who you are. And I think the sooner you can discover that for yourself, the better.
And I think that's a great place to end, especially with the fact that our topic was unpredictability. And somewhat predictably, we ended up finishing not talking about that at all.
Yes,
So, not even loosely related anymore.
that's right.
Anyway, I think we gotta call this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's great. So yeah, so if people if this makes you think of anything or we want to know what you think about unpredictability too. And really if you want to respond to anything that we talked about or any other examples of other artists that had similar path, let us know.
Yeah, and we also wanna know always what topic you'd like to hear us talk about in the future. We've got lots of stuff, as you can tell, that we could just keep talking about stuff we wanna talk about, but we would also like to make sure we're not just talking for ourselves, that we are talking about stuff that you wanna hear, at least occasionally. So toss that in the comments as Adam less so, me more so.
That's right. All
As
right.
soon as I said that, I saw Adam's brain was like, "No, not really."
Yeah. No, I'm up for anything. I'm up for anything. But this was great. Thanks, bud.
All right. Thank
We'll
you,
see you next
and
Monday
we
and we are
on
on
to
to
the
the
next
next
project.
project. Bye.
We'll get that down some point.